Before we get into Elvis's filmography during the 1960s, it's important to talk about how I intend to approach them. To compare a movie like Kissing Cousins or Clambake to King Creole is inherently unfair, so I plan on taking each movie on its own merits. The Elvis movie formula is established very early in the 1960s and continued throughout the decade, so to talk about how Elvis is once again playing a singing, race car driving, karate chopping womanizer former soldier with a phobia doesn't serve any greater purpose or add anything to the discussion that isn't already well known. In order to really analyze these films, I have to set aside the mythology of Elvis as a game-changing rock and roll artist and set aside awareness of Elvis's underutilized potential as an actor and take these movies as if I were watching them without knowing there were any other movies starring Elvis Presley. That's not to say I won't talk about them in the context of his greater career, I will, but I think to write off the scripts, the cinematography, the acting, and the soundtracks without analysis as just another Elvis movie goes against the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish with these reviews. Even Peter Guralnick, author of Careless Love, The Unmaking of Elvis Presley, a book that many tout as the second half of the definitive Elvis biography, barely mentions some of Elvis's movies. In fact, he couldn't even be bothered to include The Trouble with Girls beyond its original title, Chautauqua, and I fundamentally disagree with that approach. Each of these films took tens of thousands of man-hours to produce, and since they make up the majority of almost 10 years of Elvis's 23-year career, I think they merit more than a half-hearted mention. Imagine if we just didn't talk about the Beatles between A Hard Day's Night and Yellow Submarine, or if we didn't talk about Steven Spielberg between E.T. and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing G.I. Blues to Saving Private Ryan, but you get my drift. Speaking of G.I. Blues, let's jump ahead 2 years in the timeline of Elvis's life to 1960. He'd been away in Germany, serving 2 years as a member of the United States Army, while manager Colonel Parker and record label RCA kept the home fires burning, releasing a steady stream of previously recorded material during Elvis's absence that kept him in the charts and in the hearts and minds of his fans. When Elvis returned, he'd been cleaned up by his time in the service in the eyes of many of his critics, but it was straight back to work for Elvis, appearing on a television special with Frank Sinatra, recording fresh material for his new album Elvis Is Back, and then heading off to Hollywood to pick up where he left off, starring in the Hal Wallis production for Paramount that was titled Cafe Europa, and then appropriately changed to G.I. Blues. Wallace had already begun pre-production before Elvis even left the military, shooting on location in Germany with the full cooperation of the US Army providing tanks and vehicles to be featured in the film. Two directors were up for the job, Michael Curtis, who had directed King Creole to great success, and Norman Taurog, who had won the Academy Award for Best Director in 1931 for the movie Skippy, at only age 32, making him the youngest person to do so. Taurog was ultimately chosen to direct G.I. Blues, and cinematographer Loyal Griggs, who had won the Best Cinematography Oscar in 1953 for the western Shane, and had also served as cinematographer on The Ten Commandments, was picked to shoot. Things were still looking up, as Wallace wanted to make as bold a statement with Elvis's first post-Army movie as RCA did with Elvis Is Back. Did it? Let's take a look. G.I. Blues starts off with a bang. Literally.
Just like it had eyes.
Gotta see me with a slingshot.
And introduces us to Tulsa McLean, an Army tank crewman serving in Germany. We learn that Tulsa and his buddies, Cookie and Rick, have started a band together with dreams of owning a nightclub back home in America, and they perform in small German clubs for experience, which occasionally doesn't go as well as they would like.
I was the kind who'd run anytime you'd call. I guess I was the only one who did.
It's one for the money, two for the show.
What are you doing?
Three to get ready now.
So what? I want to hear the original.
Wait a minute. Stop the movie. Rewind. Is that the really old teenager from Loving You? The one Elvis got into a fight with?
Burns, what color you want?
Holy crap, it is. And he picks the Elvis record off the jukebox. That is hilarious.
Honey, lay off of my shoes and don't you tell my mother.
So as it turns out, Tulsa and his division are being transferred to Frankfurt, Germany, and they hear from another GI that there's a club in Frankfurt with a beautiful star dancer who's rumored to be hard to get with. And the men in their division take bets that one of their men, nicknamed Dynamite, can spend the night with Lily.
Well, I got $50 that says I can defrost her.
And I got 50. I'd like to double.
I got Lily as far as the door. Let's see if you can make it inside and stay around for a few hours, like till dawn.
Give me 3 days.
I'll give you a week.
That's a bet.
10 on Dynamite.
Tulsa, eager to raise more money to help offset a down payment on the club back home, goes in on the bet too. But when Dynamite is reprimanded for bad behavior and is transferred to Alaska, Tulsa is convinced to take Dynamite's place.
Silence! Tulsa's gonna take Dynamite's place.
Arriving in Frankfurt via train, the GIs head straight to the Cafe Europa as soon as they can and get their first glimpse of Lily, played by Juliet Prowse, a dancer and actress who became famous after her appearance in the movie Can Can. While Tulsa initially tries a more subtle approach in meeting Lily, the guys get Tulsa called up on stage to perform a song.
Better sing, soldier. Your loyal public is waiting.
This might be the end of a beautiful beginning.
You got the hug in his arms, the thrill in his eyes. You're just my style and you're just the right size. Don't stop shoving around.
Lily is impressed with Tulsa's talent and charm and agrees to go out with him for the evening. Meanwhile, Rick goes to find his former lover Marla, who's rumored to be living in Frankfurt, and Cookie begins to fall for an Italian woman named Tina. Unfortunately for Tulsa, it turns out that Tina and Lily happen to be roommates.
Cookie! What are you doing here in Tina's apartment?
Oh, but it's my apartment, too. We're roommates.
Despite not making it that first night, Tulsa asks Lily if she'd be up for another date, and she agrees, taking Tulsa around Germany and showing him the sights, including a boat ride, a cable car ride, and a puppet show. Slowly but surely, Tulsa begins to win her over. However, Tulsa begins to regret taking the bet, and he doesn't want Lily to get hurt. So once they return home, he calls off their date for later that evening and tells the guys the bet is off.
You didn't tell Lily about the bet.
I didn't tell Lily about anything. I just called off our date, that's all. There's no need in both of us thinking I'm a hero.
You're off of your rocker.
Look, Cookie, I'm going back to the barracks. The bet is off.
But Tulsa,
Nothing you can say will change my mind.
Meanwhile, Rick has found Marla, and a surprise, he's a father. So he rings up Tulsa and asks Tulsa to babysit while he and Marla go out of town to get married.
You said this was an emergency. You didn't bring me over here just to give me a cigar, did you?
I found Marla.
I had a hunch you did.
We're gonna be married.
Well, now, how about that? And you want me to be best man, right?
I know, we need a babysitter.
A babysitter?
Marla?
Tulsa, as it turns out, isn't that great of a babysitter.
Army Manual, Section 43. When in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy, apply judo chop to the back of neck. Oh, if you was only my size, you little rascal. Come on. Give it here.
With no one else to turn to for help, Tulsa calls Lily and asks her to come over, and they stay together all night to take care of Junior. And Tulsa apologizes for the way he's been acting.
Lily, I'm sorry to bother you so late and everything, but you were the first person I could think of. The only one.
I'm flattered. I'm also very glad. I didn't think I would see you again.
Yeah, that goes for me, too.
However, his fellow soldiers, not knowing about the baby, think that Tulsa spent the night with Lily, and the next day at a rehearsal for the Armed Forces show that both Lily and Tulsa's band are participating in, the truth about the bet slips
I
out.
want to talk to you.
What about?
You're asking me what about who won the bet for us? He did stay in your apartment till morning, didn't he? No offense, ma'am.
There was no bet. We called it off.
Then how come everybody got paid? I gotta find Cookie. Maybe he'll have an angle.
Look, I know what you're thinking, but that's not how it was.
Naturally. The whole matter concerned two other people.
No, it was us.
You tell me about it some other
I'll
time.
tell you about it now.
However, upon spotting Junior and meeting Marla backstage, Lily learns that Tulsa really did just want help babysitting, and she forgives him.
Miss Lily,
Yes.
I believe the Army owes you an apology. Now, I must tell you that your rendezvous with this young man had a mercenary motive.
There was a bet on it.
A bet that McLean here could spend the night with you alone.
I'm afraid that wasn't the case, Captain. We were extremely well chaperoned. You see, Tulsa and I were babysitting.
Oh, that's right, Captain, for Marla and me.
You babysitting? Well, I certainly can't transfer a man for that. Well, I wish I'd known before that you went in for this kind of work. Mrs. Hobart and I have a date for bridge tomorrow evening. How are you with twins?
Twice as helpful, sir. Here you go, Tiger. Back to your papa. I got work to do. Captain?
Captain.
Lily? Well, this isn't the time, and it's certainly not the place.
Well, of course I'll marry you.
Wait, what?
I love you.
Who is talking about marriage? They met 2 days ago. Where did that come from? No, don't start the song. I have questions. Who keeps the money from the bet? Does Tulsa lose the bet and just not get the money to start the club? How do his buddies feel about this? Are Tulsa and Lily planning on staying in Germany or going to America when he gets out of the service? How will her family feel about that? Does she even have a family? How is Tina going to be able to afford the apartment on her own?
Did you ever?
No, Tulsa, I didn't ever have one of those days. I don't have any idea what's going on anymore. Is anyone going to wrap up any of these plot lines or answer these questions? No? Nope. That's it. End of the movie. Well, aside from the horribly rushed and terribly confusing ending, G.I. Blues is amusing. Let me put it this way, G.I. Blues is the cinematic equivalent of innocently shrugging your shoulders. It's a harmless, fairly humorous slice of late 50s post-war army life. As a comedy, it's not laugh-out-loud hilarious, but it garners some nice chuckles at both the jokes themselves and seeing this soldier in some really silly situations, and both Elvis and Juliet Prowse are charming. The plot is fairly simple and straightforward, and Elvis is comfortable and likable as Tulsa. When you see him begin to regret taking the bet, Elvis sells Tulsa's discomfort well. It's never a dramatic stretch for any of the actors, but with the material they've got, they do a really good job. Juliet Prowse also gets 2 full numbers to show off her dance skills, and she nails it. However, I do have a few problems with this movie. The subplots about Tulsa's band, particularly Cookie and Tina, don't really go anywhere, aren't particularly funny, and are only there to add an obstacle to Tulsa's night with Lily, but it doesn't break the movie either. Again, the ending just comes out of nowhere, and the middle chunk of the movie where Tulsa and Lily are dating feels slightly less like a date and more like a tourism film for West Germany, with Lily spouting factoids while trying to avoid Tulsa's advances. The love story was interesting enough with the 2 good leads. We didn't need to be interrupted by the Travel Channel. But the audiences loved it. G.I. Blues was the 14th top-grossing film of 1960, and despite critics not taking to the story, Elvis was mostly praised for his acting, and his portrayal of the clean-cut G.I. Tulsa McLean was an indicator of a new direction for Elvis, one that people of all ages, not just teenagers, could enjoy and appreciate. On the whole, G.I. Blues is not a bad movie. It's a male-driven film to be sure, but it's entertaining, still has some funny moments, and provides a neat look into the lives of soldiers during that quiet period of peacetime between the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And the music? Well, that of course means we'll have to head to part 2 in my favorite section. Hey! At least he sings.